The most controlled person in any room is not the one who smiles the most. It is the one people hesitate to challenge. And at some point you lost sight of that. You were trained to be agreeable, to be pleasant, to compress yourself into forms that made others feel at ease. You were told kindness was strength, that turning the other cheek was virtuous, that the meek would somehow inherit the earth. But look around. Look at who actually holds power. It is not the meek. It is not the gentle. It is not those who constantly apologize for taking up space. It is those who carry a quiet, unmistakable signal within them. A presence that communicates without words. Don't push this too far. That trait, subtle, magnetic, and unsettling, is what I call being dangerous. Not violent. Not aggressive. Not loud. Dangerous. And in this polished world of curated identities, conflict avoidance, and emotional sensitivity, you have been systematically stripped of that edge. You were taught that danger is outdated, that it belongs to a brutal past, that it has no place in a civilized society. But here is what Niccolò Machiavelli understood 500 years ago, a truth that still cuts through layers of modern self-help noise. A man who cannot be dangerous is not peaceful. He is simply harmless. And the harmless are never respected. They are managed. This video is not about becoming cruel. It is not about harming others or moving through life clenched and hostile. This is about something far more precise and far more effective. By the end, you will understand what it really means to develop an edge, a psychological sharpness that protects you without being displayed. You will see how the modern world conditions you to become soft, why your compliance is profitable, and how to rebuild the dangerous core that has been gradually removed since childhood. But understand this, not everyone is prepared for what comes next. If you believe that being nice alone will protect you from exploitation, if you think good intentions are enough to survive among wolves disguised as coworkers, friends, or lovers, then this message may not be for you. But if a part of you already knows, if there is a quiet voice saying, "I've been accommodating for too long," then stay. Because what we are about to examine is not taught in schools, not celebrated in polite society, and never printed on a motivational poster. Let's begin. There was a time when every man carried a knife. Not symbolically, literally. A blade at the hip. A tool, a signal, a reminder to the world and to himself. I am capable. This was not about violence. It was about recognition. An unspoken agreement that said, we are all dangerous here, and because of that we treat one another with respect. Machiavelli lived in that reality. Florence in the late 1400s was not forgiving to the timid. City-states fought constantly for power. Alliances shifted without warning. Betrayal was not a possibility but an expectation. Survival required more than moral intentions. It required teeth. Machiavelli watched men rise and fall not because of virtue, but because of their readiness to be feared when circumstances demanded it. He observed what later, sanitized philosophies tried to ignore. Power moves toward those who are seen as capable of using it. In The Prince, he wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." This line is famous and often misread. Many interpret it as a defense of tyranny or cruelty. But Machiavelli did not argue for cruelty. He argued for capacity, for carrying within yourself the potential for decisive force, and allowing that potential to be felt. That distinction matters. The cruel man reacts impulsively. He punishes because he lacks control. He strikes out because he has no inner discipline. His aggression is weakness disguised as strength. The dangerous man is different. He is restrained, composed, and still. And because of that restraint, others sense the depth beneath the surface. There is an old Italian concept called terribilità. It was used to describe Michelangelo, not his work, but his presence. His ability to enter a room and quiet it. Not through threats, but through weight. Through an intensity so concentrated that even popes hesitated before opposing him. That is the quality we have lost. That is what this softened world has taken from you. And it was not accidental. The organized weakening of the human spirit may be the most effective psychological campaign ever conducted. It began, as manipulation often does, with good intentions. Schools taught cooperation, sharing, and the suppression of competitive instincts that once kept your ancestors alive. You learned to wait your turn, defer to authority, and avoid making scenes at all costs. Conflict resolution became the highest ideal, not conflict mastery, which requires strength, but conflict avoidance, which requires only fear relabeled as maturity. Over time, a message was reinforced in countless ways. Dangerous is bad, safe is good, power is suspect, compliance is virtue. By adulthood, the conditioning was complete. Standing your ground became aggressive. Setting boundaries became toxic. Carrying yourself with unapologetic authority became intimidating. And intimidation, you were told, was unacceptable. But ask yourself this: who benefits when you are easy to intimidate? Who gains when your instinct is to appease rather than assert? Not you. The beneficiaries are those who want control, employers seeking obedience without resistance, partners demanding compliance without discussion, systems that require conformity without challenge. Machiavelli understood this clearly. He wrote, "Men are so simple and so driven by immediate needs that he who deceives will always find someone willing to be deceived." This softening is not random. It is deliberate. A population of harmless people is easy to govern, easy to sell to, easy to manipulate. Dangerous individuals are inconvenient. They question, resist, and refuse to be pushed into consensus. So danger itself, not violence, had to be discredited. Violence is crude and often counterproductive. But danger, the quiet internal ability to cause damage if necessary, had to disappear. For most people, it has. Look at modern self-improvement language. It emphasizes softening. Be vulnerable. Be open. Remove your armor. Display your wounds. And there is some truth in that. Vulnerability has its role. Real connection requires openness. But vulnerability without strength becomes an open door to exploitation. The message is often incomplete. It's always be gentle, never be gentle when it benefits you and firm when it doesn't. The most predatory people on the planet never read books about healing their inner child. They studied those who did, and they learned to identify targets through the language of submission. You were disarmed by kindness. Now it's time to discuss rearming. Here is the paradox most people never understand. The truly dangerous individuals are often the most peaceful. They do not start conflicts. They do not seek confrontation. They move through the world with a quiet presence that unsettles others because it cannot be easily read. Violence is loud. Danger is silent. Violence is reactive. Danger is patient. Violence needs constant validation. Danger has nothing to prove. When I speak about becoming dangerous, I am not referring to rage or physical force. I am talking about reclaiming something that exists in every human being but has been suppressed through shame, conditioning, and cultural influence. It is your capacity for intensity, your ability to say no and stand by it, your willingness to walk away from situations that diminish you without offering explanations, your refusal to be controlled by guilt, obligation, or the pressure to always be agreeable. Machiavelli observed that people in power maintain control not through constant action, but through the perception of what they could do if pushed. He advised, never try to win by force what can be won by deception. But he also made it clear that force must remain an option, never reckless, but present, visible, and understood. This is what I call weight. Have you ever encountered someone who never raised their voice, never threatened, never postured, yet you instinctively knew not to cross them? That is weight. It cannot be imitated. Comes from deep internal alignment, a quiet certainty. I am capable. I am willing. And I am choosing not to act. That choice is essential. A man who cannot fight is not peaceful. He is simply incapable. His calm is not a decision, it is a restriction. But a man who has the capacity to destroy, who carries that ability calmly within himself and still chooses restraint, that man has earned his peace, and everyone around him senses the distinction. Human beings are finely tuned to danger. 10,000 years of evolution have trained your nervous system to detect threats in milliseconds, long before conscious thought intervenes. We read micro-expressions. We notice tension in posture. We feel the difference between someone performing calm and someone who truly is calm. This is why authenticity matters. You cannot fake danger. You can only develop it. The man who inflates his chest, speaks loudly, and compensates with aggression is easy to read. His behavior exposes insecurity. Excess always signals weakness. But the man who is still becomes a question mark. And question marks are unsettling to those who need to label you, predict you, and control you. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, because everyone can see you, but few can touch you." The meaning is straightforward. Perception creates reality. If people view you as dangerous, you are effectively dangerous, even if you never act on it. That perception alone alters how others treat you and what they are willing to attempt. This is why presence matters. Not the exaggerated, self-aware presence of someone obsessed with body language techniques, but real presence, the kind that emerges when someone knows who they are, what they can do, and what they will not tolerate. This cannot be created overnight, but it can be built. It begins with a simple question: what am I afraid to do that I know I should? Maybe it's speaking up when you're disrespected. Maybe it's leaving a situation that drains you. Maybe it's saying no to someone who depends on your compliance. That moment, the one your body tightens around, is exactly where your danger resides. Each time you avoid it, you bury yourself a little deeper. Each time you move toward it, not with anger but with calm, deliberate clarity, you reclaim a portion of the weight you lost. Here is an uncomfortable reality. Modern culture doesn't merely tolerate weakness, it rewards it. Victimhood has become a form of currency. Fragility is celebrated. Offense is amplified. One of the strongest signals a person can send today is, "I am hurt, and it is someone else's fault." Because victimhood is safe. It demands nothing. It removes responsibility. The victim cannot be criticized because they suffer. They cannot be challenged because they are wounded. And most importantly, they cannot be feared because they have surrendered their capacity for danger. This is exactly what certain power structures prefer. A population that defines itself as victims never organizes resistance. They seek protection instead of power. They look upward for rescuers, not inward for strength. But observe the people who actually shape the world. They do not define themselves as victims. Even when they have endured real suffering, and many have, they do not lead with wounds. They lead with will. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is a woman and that to keep her under control, one must strike and restrain her. Crude language, intentionally provocative and easy to dismiss. But beneath the metaphor lies a principle: life rewards those who act upon it, not those who wait passively. Fortune, circumstance, luck, fate, does not favor inaction. It does not reward patience alone. It responds to audacity, to assertiveness, to movement. This is not cruelty. It is personal agency. The world is not built to protect or nurture you. It is built to shape you into whatever role best serves whoever holds power at a given moment. If you stay soft, you will be shaped. If you become dangerous, you begin to shape instead. There is a part of you that has been pushed aside. A part that once had a voice, that knew exactly what it wanted and pursued it without shame. When you were young, this part was awake. You protested. You demanded. You were not polite. You were alive in a raw, unfiltered way. Over time, you were trained to suppress it. Don't be too intense. Don't take up too much room. Don't make people uneasy. You learned that your natural drive was something to fix, that ambition was labeled arrogance, that intensity was seen as a threat, and that being threatening was wrong. So you dimmed it. You reduced yourself. You became less imposing and easier to accept. And now you question why you feel drained, why life feels dull, why emotions seem muted compared to before. The reason is simple. The fire was never put out. It was buried, restrained, sealed away, and it is waiting to be uncovered. Carl Jung, one of the psychologists who explored the concept of the shadow most deeply, wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Why is it terrifying? Because full self-acceptance includes accepting your capacity for harm. It means recognizing the part of you that could dominate, manipulate, or destroy. Not because you intend to, but because you are capable of it. This is what Jung described as integrating the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is made up of the parts of yourself that were judged unacceptable and pushed into the unconscious. Your capacity for danger was among the first to be exiled. Reclaiming it does not mean becoming violent. It means becoming complete. A complete person holds both light and darkness, softness and severity, empathy and the ability to apply force when necessary. When these qualities are balanced, you become uncommon. Someone who chooses kindness not from fragility, but from strength. That choice, deliberate and informed by capability, is what gives kindness value. A lamb is not kind because it refuses to attack. It simply cannot. A lion that chooses restraint is different. That choice carries weight. That is what danger truly is. To be precise, being dangerous in the modern world does not depend on physical strength, though that can help. It does not require wealth, though resources expand options. It does not require powerful connections, though isolation increases risk. What it requires first and foremost is internal non-negotiability. There must be boundaries inside you that cannot be crossed. Not rules handed down by society, but personal absolutes you would defend at any cost. Most people lack these boundaries. They will accept almost anything when social pressure is strong enough. They abandon principles when approval is threatened. They trade integrity for comfort, ease, or acceptance. That is what makes them manageable. The dangerous individual is not manageable. Not because they resist everything blindly. Aimless rebellion is immaturity, not strength. They are unmanageable because they hold core commitments that cannot be purchased, intimidated, or bargained away. Machiavelli warned that a promise is shaped by the needs of the past, while breaking it often serves the needs of the present. He understood that many people act based on convenience, that their commitments are performances rather than convictions, and that loyalty lasts only as long as comfort does. The dangerous person operates differently. When they commit, it is real. When they set a boundary, they maintain it. When they speak, their words carry weight because others know those words are supported by something solid. That support is not physical force. It is psychological certainty. The certainty that pressure will not sway you, that manipulation will fail, that coercion has no leverage. This certainty is sensed, not explained. Once it becomes your foundation, everything shifts. People stop testing you not because you threaten them, but because they recognize it is pointless. Conversations change. You no longer feel the desperate need to justify, convince, or appease. You state your position calmly and clearly. If it is not accepted, you leave. Relationships change as well. You draw in people who respect strength and distance yourself from those who seek to exploit weakness. The quality of every interaction improves. Internally, something changes too. The constant question of, "Am I enough?" begins to fade, because it is no longer a question. It becomes a statement. I am enough. Agreement is optional. In martial arts, there is a concept called zanshin. It describes a state of relaxed awareness maintained even after an action is completed. The mind stays clear. The body remains ready. There is no lapse in attention, no moment of exposure. This is the posture of the dangerous mind. Not tension, which exhausts and distorts judgment, but readiness. A quiet vigilance. Awareness without strain. Energy preserved, prepared to move in whatever direction the moment demands. Most people exist in one of two states, numb comfort or frantic reaction. They are either disengaged or overwhelmed. The dangerous person occupies a third state, present, composed, and fully capable. Machiavelli observed this quality in Cesare Borgia, whom he studied during his diplomatic work. Despite Borgia's many brutal actions, Machiavelli noted something beyond violence, an ability to remain still before acting decisively. Borgia did not react impulsively. He evaluated. He waited. And when he acted, it was final. This is not about praising historical figures for their cruelty. It is about understanding the psychological principle behind their effectiveness. Stillness generates power. When you remain still, others move first, and in doing so, they expose themselves. Stillness allows energy to collect instead of scatter. When you are still, the world begins to move toward you. Not because you are passive, but because stillness creates gravity. Loud, restless, reactive individuals have no pull. They are always moving, always dispersed. The still individual attracts attention, influence, and control. This is the craft of being dangerous. Doing less while meaning more. Speaking less while conveying more. Moving less while achieving more. This is not passivity. It is disciplined presence. It is about precision. Let me explain what happens when you remain harmless. Nothing dramatic occurs. That is what makes it cruel. There is no sudden disaster, no clear moment you can point to and say, that's when everything collapsed. Instead, there is a slow wearing down, a steady buildup of moments where you should have spoken but stayed silent, where you should have left but chose to remain. Moments where you should have insisted on respect but settled for less. Each compromise feels minor, manageable, even logical. It's not worth the argument. I'll let it slide this once. Maybe I'm overthinking it. And year after year, compromise after compromise, you turn into someone you no longer recognize. You look in the mirror and see a face trained to smile on cue. Eyes that no longer hold contact. A posture that bends inward, as if apologizing for existing. This is the price of softness. Not a loud collapse, but a quiet fading. The person you could have been. The one who stood their ground, who carried authority, who moved through life with substance and presence, disappears slowly. And the hardest part is that no one notices, because the world does not grieve what never fully existed. The people around you adapt to the reduced version of you. They forget who you were before you started shrinking. They accept the smaller you as the real you. Eventually, you do the same. Machiavelli wrote, "There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others." He was writing about nations, but the idea applies inward as well. Every conflict you avoid does not vanish. It accumulates. Every boundary you fail to defend becomes a standard. Every time you accept disrespect, you teach others to expect your acceptance. You believe you are preserving peace. In reality, you are giving up ground. And one day, you wake up with nothing left to give. You find yourself living a life shaped entirely by other people's expectations, wondering how you ended up there. That is the cost. Here is what is rarely explained about predators. In nature, predators are not cruel. They are not sadistic. They do not hunt for enjoyment. They are simply alert. Their senses are active. Their focus is complete. Every movement has purpose. Every decision is measured against survival. Prey animals exist in a different state. Persistent low-level fear. Dependence on the herd. Reaction instead of strategy. Always watching for threats, but never becoming one. Modern society has turned nearly everyone into prey. We live with constant anxiety. We move in groups, ideological, cultural, professional. We react to notifications, headlines, and cycles of outrage. We are always scanning for danger. But we have lost the predator mind. The mind that shapes reality instead of responding to it. The mind that moves with intention, not impulse. The mind that others instinctively avoid challenging. Reclaiming this mindset is not about becoming violent. Predators, remember, are rarely violent. They do not need to be. Their capability is communicated so clearly that most conflicts never arise. A wolf does not fight every animal it encounters. Its presence alone defines what is possible. That presence, the predator state, is what has been taken from you. Recovering it begins with a fundamental change in how you view yourself. You are not here to be liked. You are not here to remain comfortable. You are not here to keep others comfortable. You are here to live fully, to pursue what matters to you with full intensity, and to refuse, completely and finally, to be reduced by those who mistake restraint for weakness. Let's move into application. How do you actually develop danger? Not performative toughness. Not borrowed aggression. Real, felt, unmistakable capacity. It starts with the body. Physical presence communicates before words ever do. Posture. Movement. How you occupy space. A person who moves slowly, who can remain still without fidgeting, who maintains eye contact without neediness, signals something basic and instinctive. You do not need to be big. You do not need to intimidate physically. But you must inhabit your body. Move as though each action is chosen. Stand as though the ground supports you. Most people move apologetically. They shrink. They minimize themselves in elevators and meeting rooms. They yield space to whoever appears more dominant. Stop doing that. Not forcefully. Calmly. Simply stop giving ground you did not decide to give. Take up space. Move at your own speed. Allow silence to exist without trying to fill it. These small changes add up. They reshape how others see you, and more importantly, how you see yourself. Second, the voice. A dangerous voice is not loud. It is steady. Slow down your speech. Lower your tone naturally by speaking from the chest rather than the throat. Remove filler words, These are verbal apologies. They signal doubt. They invite interruption. Speak as though each word has weight because it does. When language becomes careless, power follows. Pause before responding. Not nervously but intentionally. Let others sit with the silence while you consider. That pause communicates something words cannot. I am not reactive. I cannot be rushed. I respond on my terms. Third, the eyes. This is where many people fail. The soft person looks away, drops their gaze when challenged, breaks eye contact during tension. The dangerous person holds. Not with aggression. Not with an unblinking stare. With steadiness. When someone speaks to you, look at them. When challenged, do not be the first to look away. When faced with intimidation, meet it with calm stillness. The eyes communicate everything. When they say, I am not afraid of this moment, the moment shifts. Fourth, the boundary. Dangerous people have limits that are understood without being announced. They do not explain them. They show them. When a line is crossed, they do not argue. They do not justify. They do not negotiate. They act quietly. Sometimes that action is leaving. Sometimes it is ending a relationship. Sometimes it is a single sentence delivered with such clarity that no discussion follows. That won't happen again. Not shouted. Simply stated. Like stating a fact. And the person hearing it knows, without fully understanding why, that it is true. This is how an edge is built. Not through one dramatic event, but through hundreds of small ones. A constant recalibration of how you move, speak, look, and enforce. Over time, it becomes your identity. And your identity becomes impossible to ignore. Now we reach the core truth. Being dangerous alone is not sufficient. Danger without wisdom becomes chaos. Power without principles becomes tyranny. Strength without restraint becomes destruction. Machiavelli understood this, despite his reputation. He did not value brutality for its own sake. What he respected was effectiveness, and he understood that effectiveness depends on balance. A prince who relies only on fear will eventually be removed. A ruler who governs through terror alone will find no loyal allies when circumstances change. For this reason, a prince who wishes to maintain power must know how to do wrong and must be able to use it, or refrain from it, according to necessity. According to necessity. Not constantly, not recklessly, not as a first option, but available, present, and ready when required. The truly dangerous individual is not someone who has rejected ethics. It is someone who has absorbed ethics so completely that they no longer require outside control. They do not avoid cruelty out of fear of punishment. They avoid it because it is wasteful, inefficient, and beneath them. But if cruelty became necessary, truly necessary, they would be capable of it without hesitation, without the paralysis that affects those who have never confronted their own darkness. This is what Jung meant by integrating the shadow. You do not become evil. You take in the capacity for evil and place it under conscious control. The integrated person can be gentle because they have faced their own violence. They can be patient because they have experienced their anger. They can forgive because they understand exactly what they are capable of if they chose not to forgive. Kindness that comes from this integration is fundamentally different from the kindness of the merely harmless. It carries weight because others sense that it is a choice, that another option exists, and that the person before them has chosen compassion from a range that includes destruction. This is the kindness of the dangerous, and it is the only kindness that earns real respect. Once you begin to change, genuinely change, the world will notice, and it will not necessarily approve. Those who benefited from your softness will resist your transformation. They will label it arrogance or coldness. They will say you have changed, and they will not mean it positively. This reaction is predictable. Your softness served them. Your compliance made their lives easier. When you withdraw that compliance, they feel the loss. Some will adjust. They will acknowledge the new version of you, respect it, and engage with you differently. Others will not. They will expend their energy trying to push you back into your former shape. They will manipulate, induce guilt, and gaslight. They will insist that the old version of you was the real one, because that version was more convenient. These people are not your enemies. They are simply revealing what the relationship was always built upon. That realization, while uncomfortable, is valuable. The dangerous person does not require relationships based on exploitation. They can afford to release them. They will form new connections, connections that recognize and respect their edge rather than attempting to dull it. Machiavelli understood that transformation creates enemies. He wrote, "There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things." But he also understood that the alternative, remaining safe, remaining unchanged, remaining soft, was a kind of death. It is better to be tested and developed than to stay comfortable and stagnate. Better to lose relationships that depend on your weakness than to keep them at the expense of your strength. Better to be dangerous and alone than harmless and surrounded. In practice, however, dangerous people are rarely alone. They attract a different kind of individual, those who respect what they have become, those who carry their own edge. Iron sharpens iron. The dangerous recognize one another. This brings us to the present moment. You have been disarmed deliberately and systematically. A soft world made you softer because soft people are easier to manage. They consume without questioning. They comply without resistance. They tolerate without limits. Yet something in you refused to disappear entirely. A small ember remained. That ember brought you here, to these words, to this moment. Now you face a choice. You can return to sleep. Close this video. Tell yourself it was interesting but unrealistic. Resume a life of strategic niceness and carefully managed comfort. Or you can begin, not with grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but with small acts of reclamation. The next time you feel the urge to apologize for existing, don't. The next time someone crosses a boundary, hold it. The next time you want to shrink, to accommodate, to make yourself smaller for someone else's comfort, refuse. Each refusal is a vote for the person you are becoming. Each act of calm assertion lays another brick in the foundation of your new self. It will be uncomfortable. You will feel tempted to retreat. But discomfort is the cost of transformation. And the person on the other side of that discomfort, the integrated, controlled, unmistakably dangerous person, is worth more than every false comfort you leave behind. Machiavelli's final lesson is often missed. He did not write The Prince for tyrants. He wrote it for those who wanted to understand how power truly works, so they could stop being victims of it. Knowledge is armor. And now you know. You understand how the world softens you and why. You know what real danger is, and what it is not. You know the choice is yours, and no one else will make it for you. One final truth: being dangerous is not light. It is not freedom from burden. It is a trade, one burden for another. The soft person carries the constant weight of fear. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of standing alone. The dangerous person carries a different weight, the weight of responsibility. The burden of understanding your capacity for harm and deciding not to use it. The burden of living with awareness in a world that rewards the unaware. This burden, however, is yours by choice. The soft individual carries a weight placed on them by others. The dangerous individual carries a weight they deliberately accept. And there is a fundamental difference between pain imposed on you and pain you consciously choose. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps, wrote, He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. The dangerous person has a reason. They carry their weight in service of something meaningful. Their restraint is intentional. Their strength is guided. And within that chosen burden, there is an unexpected lightness. The lightness that comes from alignment. The lightness of being fully yourself without apology. You were taught that softness would bring peace. Did it? Or did it leave you with a constant low-level tension, never fully sure where you stand with others or even with yourself? Danger, paradoxically, offers a deeper form of peace. The peace of clarity, of alignment, of knowing you will not betray yourself regardless of external pressure. That peace is available to you, not through further accommodation, not in the next compromise, not by making yourself more acceptable to those who would reduce you. It exists in the opposite direction, in reclaiming your edge, integrating your shadow, and patiently, deliberately developing a presence that cannot be dismissed. The soft world will continue to soften. Let it. You have different work to do. The question was never whether you were capable of being dangerous. You are. You always have been. The real question is whether you will allow yourself to be, whether you will stop apologizing for your own capacity, whether you will accept that power itself is not evil. Only power without control is. Whether you finally decide that comfort matters less than integrity and likability less than self-respect. There is no final arrival here. This is not a place you reach one day and declare yourself complete. It is a practice, a discipline, an ongoing negotiation between who you are and who you refuse to become. But that process begins now, with this moment, with the next choice, with the quiet decision to choose weight over ease. No one will praise you for this. The soft world does not reward the dangerous. But you will know. And in the quiet certainty of that knowledge, something settles. Something old, steady, and unmistakably yours. The fire that was buried begins to draw breath. And you become, at last, someone who cannot be overlooked. If what you've heard has touched something deeper than most content ever reaches, understand that this is all I can share openly. There are layers of this understanding I cannot explore here. The algorithm does not reward depth. It suppresses what it cannot easily label. The most transformative ideas are often buried or removed entirely. That is why I place them elsewhere. Behind the join button is a level I call the architect. It contains what I deliberately hold back. The framework is too challenging for a general audience. The psychology of influence most people are not ready to confront. If you're still here after all of this, you're not like most. Subscribe if you haven't. But if you want what's actually hidden, click join. Most won't. And that's exactly the point.